chapter clicked in to College Volleyball Weekly on Viral Volley Media. Now here's your host, Rob on mic.
All right, good day, everyone. As always, we're going to change the name of the show today from CVW Men's Top 20 to CVW the Tumultuous Top 20 because it has been quite the week. We're going to get right into it because Dan wants to take care of business. He's in, and half of the people on the screen had 50-50 weeks. The other half were undefeated, one of them because he is off this week. So that's Jay Hossack of George Mason. Got Brad Rostratter of UC San Diego, Dan Brand of Lewis, and Theo Edwards of CSUN. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Morning, Rob.
We're going to start right off with number 19, UCSD, splitting the series with the Trojans of USC. Let's go straight to head coach Brad Rostratter. Thoughts on your series?
Yeah, it was interesting to see how much can change over the course of 2 days. Just from, strictly, the biggest X factor for us was our serving. Night one, Wednesday night against USC. I don't know how many, but we had a good bit of aces, a good bit of errors that came with that as well. But just ended up giving us a lot of points and gave us a lot of momentum and a lot of close sets. And then night two, Friday night at the Galen Center, looked a little bit different from the end line and couldn't quite apply the same pressure. And with that, USC ended up hitting really, really well and really efficiently against us. And that ended up being the two main differences on that side of things.
All right, other coaching panel, thoughts on the San Diego USC matchup?
It's interesting to see what the shift was that Nygaard made. I'm interested to ask Brad what he thought the shift was. Was there a strategic change? Was it just their players responded better or differently? Because we're going to talk about it when we get to another match coming up soon, which is something we all talked about last week. But I'm interested, Brad, what you did differently or what they did differently that you noticed that was a difference maker, if anything.
Yeah, they started the series with Jackson Reed on the left for them. And then I think midway through set three, or maybe the start of set three, they subbed in Riley Hain, who originally started the year and then had been out for a bit. And he played pretty well. And then he got the start. So that was the only tactical change, was Riley Hain started night two, which I think made them a little bit more physical at the net blocking wise. And serve receive wise, he didn't necessarily help or hurt, was passing around the same as Jackson Reed was. But I think just that physicality added a little bit of a different dynamic as opposed to his block, as opposed to Jackson Reed.
Anyone else want to chime in on the UC San Diego series?
Brad, did you was there a band present for your guys' match at USC?
Yeah, there was a band.
Were they doing some really nice heckling at that end line or what?
There was a band and then some frat guys too. That they definitely made it a good vibe there. It was fun to compete in some hostile territory.
Yeah, they definitely put some pressure on the visitors. I think it's a fun place to play.
All right, with that, let's go to our next upset-minded segment piece. But I need to say, there's only 2 teams left that are undefeated in the nation. Forgot to do that in the intro, which is pretty big. So some teams took some losses, but that brings us to handing the first loss to a very good Stanford team. That's head coach of the Theoites, Theo Edwards, number 17, CSUN, splitting the series with number 4, Stanford. Theo, thoughts on the match or matches?
Yeah. The series was interesting. I think we prepped for a Stanford team that Will Rotman would be on and in the lineup, and I thought that Stanford did a tremendous job, and it was a unique match. Like, to be honest with you, if you have a chance to watch it, that first night we played in Burnham, which I believe is now kind of their home court. It's where they practice. It's where, since the program came back, it's where their offices are. It's their space, and they played incredibly well. And to be completely frank, I think they passed as well or better than if Rotman was out there. And they absolutely dominated the serve and pass game, and it was apparent. And it's how they beat us. And we made some adjustments on night 2, and I think it was a completely different serving experience in terms of what we did, and being in Maples on night 2 was obviously a different environment, even though it's still their home court. And I think we won the serve and pass game, and it changed the outcome of the match. But thought Stanford played incredibly well, and it's a testament to their depth. They have a lot of guys that can play a lot of different positions, and 9 seniors. I mean, they're incredibly experienced and incredibly talented. And to get Lamp back in the lineup and playing the way that he did, serving the way that he did, I mean, he was absolutely outstanding for them.
Yeah, but I noticed that both Rotmans are out too. They didn't see any time because Will Rotman's a big loss, but Alex, the younger brother, is also a pretty potent force for the costing the guys.
Yeah, and Will was definitely injured and didn't do any warming up or anything of that nature. The younger brother was warming up, hitting, looking good, and I heard his teammates mention, and he's back type of thing. So I think he may have had just some sort of a tweak, but he was out there and playing pretty well. And but I don't think he was quite ready to play yet. So I think both those guys are dealing with some sort of injuries for sure.
One of the biggest upsets of the week in night number 2. You guys come in 17th ranked, Stanford at 4, but let's let the other guys chime in.
I think a little bit of a topic, and I mean, I think me and Jay both thought Theo was going to win one no matter what was out there. So good job, Theo. Way to back us up.
It's not because he's on the screen with you guys. That's the other reason why.
Yeah. So, but I think a little bit of a theme, and we know this is part of the season. I mean, Kerr's out. We talk about Pasteur was out. We talk about Bianchi. Was he hurt a little bit? You talk about Rotman. It's like, I think teams go through that, whether it be injuries or a piece missing here or there. And like Theo said, they didn't have him. They responded really well. The Theo game plan was able to come back the next night and take care of business. But I think that's just part of it. Some teams are going to be built with depth that can survive some of those matches. But when you talk about key All-American players that are out of lineups, it certainly changes a team. And I don't know that anybody can totally survive when they have those pieces down, at least for longevity. It doesn't mean they might not win a match here or there, but I'm not taking anything away from any of the teams that had upsets. I mean, they have to go in and perform and win. But I think that'll be, as the season goes on, is like people's health is always a big factor in terms of determining, where teams are at and how they're performing a little bit. And it's not even just because they perform, but it's a flow of the group. I mean, if you got a starting group, and this is why coaches, I think most coaches don't want to make a lot of changes. You get a group of 7 guys out there, and the nuances of playing together and passing seams and defensive seams and how you're blocking next to each other, all those things are huge in tight matches. And you throw a new guy and something to take some time just to get used to that a little bit. So.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that. Every great team has at least one go-to guy, at least one guy they can go, hey, we're in trouble. Let's chuck it up to him. Let's get out of this rotation. Let's move on. And I think you've seen over the past few weeks that one player is extremely impactful. And when that guy is not playing anymore, some other guys have to pick up the slack. That when they're not the guy that has the magnifying glass on them, it's easy to kind of fly under the radar and get some kills and help the team move forward. But all of a sudden, the focus gets put on you, and you're getting maybe 3, 4, 5 sets a game. All of a sudden, you start to become a little bit more predictable. You get a little bit easier to read, can't handle the load maybe as much, and those teams become pedestrian. And then I say pedestrian, meaning like everybody else. Now you've got to play the game at a little bit higher level all the way around rather than have that one guy who can beat your way out of trouble. But, hats off to Theo. That's a great win up there in Burnham, or in Maples, no less. I like playing in Burnham. It's a tight little area, and it's got a lot of history and tradition, but for Theo and the Theoites, if you will, the Nordoffs, fighting Nordoffs, it's a great win for them. Super stoked.
It wasn't Star Wars night as they were heckling you on the sideline there, Theo?
No, they actually, there was a Tyrannosaurus Rex on the sideline and some sort of a banana. It was pretty interesting. That's for sure.
No dressed up tree, no tree bouncing around like this.
No, I haven't seen that thing in a while. That structured tree with like the pom-poms hanging off of it.
Yeah.
Well, the question is, which outfit had the keg in it? Was it the Tyrannosaurus Rex or was it the banana? Because one of those historically, there's a keg in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think that actually there was this tiny hot dog that they were trailing, and I think that might have been it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, some big performers in your match. Names that kept coming up. Kyle Hobus, obviously, on night 2 with 22 kills, hitting .415. Just went bonkers. Jalen Phillips has been such a consistent guy for you guys. And like you're saying, Kevin Lamp getting the nod both nights, and he was a leader in all the stat categories for the Cardinal.
Yes, Kevin Lamp, like, I mean, look, we would all be absolutely blessed and fortunate to have a guy like Kevin Lamp. That team was undefeated, and Kevin really wasn't a part of the lineup. And that guy comes off the bench, and he's serving like a fifth-year senior that he is, and just absolutely bombing the ball. I think they had 10 aces that first night, and he had at least half of them. I mean, he played fantastic.
Brad, anything to add on the your fellow Big West counterparts matchups this week?
No, I didn't get to check out the match, but looking at the numbers, it looked like Jalen Phillips continues to be someone that, as we get closer to Big West plays, how do we figure out stopping him? We might have to lower our gym ceilings here in Lion Tree.
When it comes to Irvine, we're just going to send in and out into the locker room before and just put 4 Jalen and just have him like stuff his face with all that and some shakes too.
Some 4x4 animal style.
Well, our next matchup, I love the alliteration this week, by the way. It's the Tumultuous Top 20. Well, this is Princeton pounding the PCHers. Upset at number 12, UC Santa Barbara, then number 10, Pepperdine. What is happening in Jersey? We'll start with the EIVA rep, Jay.
It's not what is happening in Jersey. He's got a good team. Why can't people just give credit to a team that is good?
It's for marketing, Jay. Marketing.
Yeah, no. You're trying to create something when there is nothing. First of all, Harrington's one of the, if not the best server in the country when he's on. A lot of us on this screen have seen him either this year or over the years. It's an absolute cannon. So, he's going out there and he's lighting people up. Nero Omeni is hitting in an altitude that not a lot of people have. I know Theo, his kid Jalen, and Nero probably touching around the same. And he's got a good setter. Wedbush knows how to run the ball around. And so Princeton doesn't surprise me at all. Santa Barbara this year looks like they're kind of working on some things. They might be rebuilding a little bit. They're maybe planning for the future. They didn't play all their starters. I don't know why. It doesn't matter to me one bit. Pepperdine's a team that historically has been strong, and Winder's got a couple of guys out there that maybe are not fight ready yet, so to speak, but they will be as the year progresses. But good for Sam and his boys. I'm super stoked that an EIVA team is representing well. Pepperdine and UC Santa Barbara are 2 historically strong powerhouses. Does not surprise me one bit, however.
There you go. Jay has spoken. Anyone else on the screen?
Well, I think hopefully Sam slides into I think they were ranked 16th. I think he should be somewhere around in the top 10 somewhere. Do you know what I mean? So it's good. Like, he goes out and makes a West Coast swing, and it's always a challenge. Do you know what I mean? I think they scheduled tough on that, and it was cool to see him go back home and have a couple West Coast schools come to him. And I think that's part of it. And you see him get 2 wins doing that. And, Jay talked about a couple of their guys that are key, but great win for Sam's club, 2 at home. And I think certainly they'll be pretty formidable as they continue to move forward.
That's right. My media poll, I had them in at number 9. So great call, Dan. Anyone else on the screen about Princeton?
Yeah, I think the interesting piece, and we've talked about this in the past, Sam sets up a schedule. They spend almost 20 days on the road, and they're all over the place. Like, I mean, people don't, maybe not everybody realizes, but when they come out to California, they're staying in different houses and they're arriving by their own personal cars, and different family friends are stepping up and helping out. And it's a unique situation. But it's also one of those things that when you survive it and you get better, and they've got so many experienced players, to finally get home and be comfortable and get 2 really good teams in there. I mean, they're a fantastic club, and Sam's doing a great job, and Nero is incredible. I mean, that guy has played a different position every season. He can play a different position match to match. He has every skill. He's absolutely dynamic, and he's my player of the week, so don't steal him.
Well, they're staying in Manhattan Beach. They're suffering in Manhattan Beach with the 2 Loyola boys. Just got to put that out there.
Yeah, I didn't say that where they were staying was rough, Rob. It's not a bad place to be.
Brad, did you have something to say there?
To me, I see Nero transitioning to the left has been an excellent move by Sam, and a testament to Nero putting in the work to become better as a passer out there. And offensively, obviously, what he hit, Theo will probably shout it out later, but almost hit over 500 on the weekend, which was impressive performance. But I think, from looking at the EIVA, it's Princeton's kind of making their case for being the top dog in the IVA right now. You know, I know Jay and Pav are going to have something to say about that, and maybe a few other teams, but based on what we've seen so far in January and early on in February, I think that's been pretty clear.
Excellent call there. You know who's been kind of flying under the radar? Ryan Vina, one of their middles, tough server, just plays some good ball. He's a big dude too. He's built like a tight end. So between he and Wedbush, Nero and Harrington, I mean, there's other people on the team, but those guys have really been playing some stand-up ball. Let's go to our next one. And this is a team that's not even receiving votes, downing the number 12 chose. That's Damon, the Wildcats, taking down UC Santa Barbara. Tough week for Santa Barbara, but anyone want to chime in there?
Yeah, Gleason, their coach at Damon, when that program was created a handful of years ago, took over and said, I'm going to try to keep the best players in Rochester and Buffalo and all that upstate New York, and I'm going to create a program that people can be proud to stay home and play for. And he's built that team into a little D2 powerhouse. You know, people around the country are going to be really upset that are traditionalists because they're going to say, oh, it's a huge upset. Oh, it's an upset against Pablo. It's an upset against Santa Barbara. It's not, you know, Cal Baptist, if nobody remembers, years ago was a little tiny NAIA program that nobody heard about. And within a short few years, their coaching staff had turned over a few times. Ryan McGuire built that thing into a ginormous powerhouse. Now, granted, they were NAIA when they started to come on the scene, and they had 8 full scholarships, and they had a lot of good kids. But then they went to Division II and then Division I. And now, you know, unfortunately, they're not here anymore, but they were a name that people started to say, oh, okay, well, Cal Baptist, that's a good team. I think you're going to see the same thing about Damon. I think you're going to see the same thing about Long Island. I think you've already seen it with Lewis. You know, Dan took that program that was decimated back in 2003 and built that team to be a powerhouse in the country. And at first, people were like, oh, Lewis, what about Lewis? Well, look what Dan's done. Nobody's saying that anymore about them. They're continually ranked. They're continually getting top-ranked players. So kudos to Gleason and his staff. Kudos to that team and the kids. You know, it's just, it might seem like an upset. I don't think it really is this year against Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara might have been ranked a little bit higher than they should be at that time, but still a darn good team, and Damon did a nice job. So hats off to them.
Yep. Anyone else on screen?
I think one of the things you see with I think you got the top 5 ranked teams, but I mean, you just saw Theo take down one, but that's the neat thing. The teams that are ranked, you know, like there's some right outside that are really good that can beat anybody on any given night. I think the teams in the teens can beat the top 5 any given night. You know what I mean? So it's always great. It's where our game is headed right now. And just some props to that group. You know, like they played Ohio State, went forth them a little bit earlier in the year, and so they've had a couple matches where they've battled and they've taken care of the ones they should have. So they got an opportunity there. I think the next step is just continuing to play those high level matches, and I think you'd see Damon with a few more wins under their belt. And that they're still in the NEC, right, Jay? That's still they're not out of it yet, right? So I think that conference, them and LIU and St. Francis, and I think it's going to be some good battles between those guys. It's unfortunate we don't see one of them get a bid yet into the tournament. So I think hopefully that'll happen the next year.
Yep.
And I think the setter from Damon, Sean Califf, is kind of going under the radar and definitely deserves some recognition. You know, I think Milligan and Schneider get some recognition here or there, but I think Califf's been doing a good job for them and definitely running a pretty good offense. And you have 3 seniors with setter and 2 pin hitters. That's a good formula if those guys have all played a lot of volleyball together.
Is he your guy? I don't want to steal him.
He may or may not. I'm not giving you any more pointers there.
Yeah, you gotta give his setter props because he had 48 assists, 14 digs, and 6 block assists. So not only was he contributing to the offense, his defense is pretty darn good as well. So Theo, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, I'm going to mention it just because we had talked about it prior to starting the show. But it was interesting. Santa Barbara changed the lineup, and they, you know, Bianchi wasn't in there, and I don't know if Rick went into it thinking, hey, this is going to be a match where we're going to give some other guys a chance to start. Obviously, Reese Barnett, who's been incredibly injured most of the year, is now finally healthy, played great, had 23 kills, and was incredibly effective. And again, like we've talked about this quite a bit, I definitely don't want to take anything away from Damon, because I think Damon's tremendous, and what they're doing and have been able to do this is not the first year. They've done it. They did it last year. They've been incredible for the last 2 or 3 seasons, and probably should be in the conversation for the top 20 at some point soon. And so it's a good team, an incredibly talented team. And so I'm wondering why Santa Barbara went the route that they did, and why did they change the lineup? And I think it'll be one of those things that is talked about for sure on Volley Talk.
The place just kind of like E for entertainment, right?
Exactly.
Brad, did you have anything to chip in there?
No, that was it.
All right. Do need to add those numbers in there. I think you mentioned Reese Barnett, son of the Net Live, the original podcast where College Volleyball Weekly came from. 23 kills. And again, had a bunch of injuries in previous years, so it was good to see him back on the court. But yeah, Cameron Milligan, 17 kills, 333, and Billy Weiberg, 12 kills and 11 digs, double, just under the radar. I was watching that match, and man, this guy's flying all over the place, and he's playing such good ball. But the numbers show right there, he was the utility guy. Let's go to a MIVA matchup. Number 15, Ball State banging it out to start off MIVA play against the Ramblers of Loyola at number 11. We'll start with Dan on that one.
Serving errors. I mean, Loyola outstatted them in almost every category, but just couldn't keep the ball on them a few more times. And it wasn't like they were getting the aces from it. So I just always interesting philosophy. Do you know what I mean? So like, or is that just the kids not executing that night? But I mean, I watched that match live or just on the video, and so deuce games every game. I think if Loyola can just keep a little bit more pressure on them, I think they might have walked out. And it's a tough place to serve. Like you go in there and it's a big, huge arena. You can't kick the ball and hit the ceiling. So it's certainly a different airspace wise to play in there. And so, but yeah, kudos to Ball State, and Tanisha getting 19 kills, and certainly Patrick Rodgers, and there's Setter did a nice job for them too. Lucas Machado, and tipping for match point, you know what I mean, at the end. So that's almost like a dagger in the heart when you see that. So, but yeah, Brad talked about earlier with SC, they go in and serve great the first night and were really good and really put some pressure, and then don't really replicate that again on the next night when they play them. And so it's like, I think that becomes a big piece, like teams as we get into February who are kind of consistently serving and passing at the level in order to allow them to play volleyball. I think that becomes pretty important. So
Loyola 22 service errors versus Ball State's 13 in that matchup. So yeah, quite the disparity in service errors. But anyone else want to talk about that match right there?
Yeah, here's the thing: 22 service errors in 4 games, so it's a little over 5 per. Mm-hmm. Which I think most coaches, if we're 3 or under per set, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good night. 4 is kind of average. 5 on depending on how you're beating them off the net and the rest of your serves. I don't think it's necessarily terrible. It's the fact that Ball State missed only 13. Like that's pretty good. They just kept the pressure on them. But
hey, they were all deuce sets.
Yeah, I know.
Extended deuce sets.
The margin of error is that much, and one more average missed serve per could be the difference maker. And then, you look at Ball State, they beat Loyola, and then the next night they lose in 3 to Penn State, and Penn State wins, in 3, then goes the next night and loses to Purdue Fort Wayne. And so anybody can beat anybody on any given night. And that's so much fun to watch, because no longer are you just going, I don't want to watch this match anymore. Now you're looking at the lineup and you're going, man, there's a lot of good matches that could go any kind of crazy way. I can't wait to get home and then look at all the scores. You're like, man, that's a crazy match. I can't believe that happened.
I think Jay brings up a point, though, the back-to-back nights. Man, you think about how that schedule's out. Penn State goes, and their back-to-back second night is against Purdue. The flip side is, Ball State plays a conference game and then plays a non-conference game on a back-to-back night. And I mean, you could say, hey, do more conditioning for you guys, but honestly, we had 2 road conference games. If I play those back-to-back, I'm not sure we get both. Do you know what I mean? It's just that little bit of extra recovery time sometimes, the day in between in terms of that stuff is huge, I think, with games sometimes.
I think another piece that was interesting with Loyola Ball State was Donan and his coaching history. His teams generally serve in, hit in, maybe not super aggressive from the end line, but generally are serving in more often. Where Hawks, we've seen early on, Loyola is pretty aggressive from that end line. And, sometimes, that works out really, really great, like it has for us at points. But then sometimes when you face a team that's almost the exact opposite with Loyola Ball State, then it's really emphasizes that and really highlights that, because now it's you having to side out 20, 21 times within a set, as opposed to getting 4 or 5 free or cheap side outs with the service error. And I think over time, if you're not well-rounded in all 6 rotations, siding out and effective and balanced, it can make it really, really the game a little bit simpler for the blockers and the defenders.
Yeah. Theo, anything to add?
Yeah, I think, it's always fun to dive into these matches that are deuce, right? Where there's such small margin of error, because you end up analyzing each and every piece, right? And I didn't have a chance to look at the actual stats on volumetrics to see what the passing numbers looked like and things of that nature. But to have a team that missed more have less aces is always an indicator of, like, they're serving tough, and maybe that's why they're missing. But if they only got 1 ace in 4 sets, you're not getting the fruits of the labor, right? Where obviously Ball State had only 13 misses and had 3 aces, so they out-aced them and missed less. That's a recipe for success for sure. But yeah, I think you look at Tanashi, and is that how you pronounce his first name, Dan?
Tanashi,
right?
Yeah.
Tanashi, having 19 kills, hitting 395. I mean, that kid, since he has been back in the lineup, I felt like the first few matches, he's kind of been getting his rhythm back and starting to get things going again. And obviously, it looked like he was humming in this match. I mean, that's a hell of a performance.
Well, there are players that make it very fun to watch on end line cams, and Tanashi and Davos Zacheva is definitely one of them, because he's getting his waist above it, seems like, at times. Jalen Phillips too. Get that inline cam in your venue, so everyone across the nation knows 3 blockers on Phillips. Anything else to add on the Ball State Loyola matchup? All right, that brings us to our final top 20, tumultuous top 20 upset. The team that's receiving votes in the MIVA, PFW, powers past Penn State. A little alliteration there. Who's number 8 this last week? Let's see, who wants to jump in? Dan, you already led the way. Let's go with Jay representing the EIVA's Penn State and that matchup between the 2 teams.
Well, again, we talked about it earlier, Penn State's got obviously a couple of really good players. I don't think there's any doubt that Toby Eziona is going to be one of the top, if not the best middle blocker in the country. They got a couple outsides that are smaller but scrappy. They got Ryan Mark at a libero, who is arguably one of the best liberos in the country. Their question mark, and John Kerr obviously is an opposite who's been sitting behind their other opposite forever, is now getting his shot to start, who obviously could be one of the better opposites. Their question mark has been which setter is going to be the one that steps up. They've got 2 right now, and they went with the smaller setter for that match. And unfortunately, Kerr in the middle of the first set kind of goes down. Doesn't look like he landed on anybody's foot. He didn't fall when it happened. He just made a swing and then all of a sudden turned around and kind of bent over, and it looked like it was something maybe with his knee or something. He's got wrapped up, but he's out for the rest of the match. And all of a sudden, Penn State's got to find a piece that can be able to hold up a little bit. And Purdue took advantage of that. They got an outside hitter who's been there for 28 years, whose shoulder is held together by duct tape. And, they got a big middle who can put the ball down. They got an experienced setter, and they're at home. And those are all good combinations right there. So, Purdue may not be the team that, that everybody's used to. They're a little bit beat up and scrappy and not quite as experienced across the board, but they got some good players. And man, they play with a chip on their shoulder. You want to talk about teams that play with a chip on their shoulder? I'll give a few examples so people can understand what I'm talking about. Purdue Fort Wayne, Cal State Northridge, North Greenville, Lincoln Memorial, Charleston. Those are all teams that they play with a little bit of moxie, a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. And when you get them into a fight, if you start to smack them around a little bit, they're not going to go down without coming back. You know, you're not going to get unscathed in that match. So hats off to Rock. That's a good win for him in his program. It kind of can help propel him into conference now and be able to have a little bit of confidence knowing they can do it against a good team. But yeah, that's all I got.
All right, panel.
I think the other piece, so like we talk about Dietrich and Frazier, they both had great nights, but Bryce Walker's their senior middle, 10 for 11, hit 900. That's
Wow.
against the Penn State two middles that are pretty good. So I think, you know, I think they've got some seniors on that team between Frazier and Dietrich and Walker, and they're going to play some havoc in some other matches as they move forward a little bit. So good win for them. I think they were doing some Hall of Fame inductions, some things like that. A lot of good pictures if you jump on their website in terms of that stuff. So, but certainly a nice feather in their cap.
Well, Walker, the block for match point in the fifth set, that went 2018. So huge celebrations after that one. Anyone else on the screen there want to talk about the PFW Penn State matchup?
Yeah, I threw it on. I checked the score and I was like, oh, this is going 5. So I got to throw it on for the 5th set. And it was cool to see. And Bryce Walker ended up, I think they were down 13-12, somewhere around that range. Bryce Walker goes on a serving run that gives him the edge there. You know, and then Toby just hits the ball out by 6 inches maybe. And then Bryce Walker ends up getting the stuff block there at the end. I think he had really the performance that closed it out in that 5th set. And then Mark Frazier had a big-time performance. He was taking a good bit of swings for him, and him and Dietrich are obviously a two-headed monster there on the pin. But, yeah, I think Frazier's someone who is slowly performing a little bit better and better and better, at least where I'm not seeing them every single week, where Dan might say he's been good all the time. But he seems to be starting to come into his zone and kind of find his stride there for the Mastodons.
Theo, anything to add?
Yeah, I think these guys mentioned all of the, you know, the analytics of the guys, but, you know, in the big picture of this, PFW is a team that is getting votes. They're not inside the top 20, but a lot of coaches know this team is the real deal, and they've got some talented pieces. And I think some people are looking at this matchup and seeing that PFW beat Penn State, and they're shocked. But for the coaches that know, you walk into PFW and this roster, these players, these guys are dogs and they can play. And, you know, I think Penn State, again, on the back-to-back was a tough matchup for them. And PFW came out with the win. And I tip my hat to Rock and his guys. And that was a great win.
Good stuff. Yeah. Frazier, 24 kills, 306. Dietrich, 21 kills, hit 5-13 for the match. Phenomenal numbers.
I think Dan mentioned it in the beginning of the year. He said John Dietrich is the real deal, and 521 kills. That's unbelievable against Penn State.
Well, let's jump back over to Dan for the best of the rest, because he's the only truly undefeated team since Jay was on vacation last week. So 2 MIVA matches. You got to like your results, Dan.
Yeah, I think, you know, Lindenwood and McHenry are both really good teams. So anytime you can get road conference wins, these guys know it's huge. So however we needed to figure it out, it was a good performance by our guys. So certainly happy as we walk into a league match against Ohio State on home on Wednesday. But yeah, our libero, I'm going to give him some love. Nico Pauly had a career high 17 digs. Kid's pretty good. So against McHenry, just in terms of, we have some stable pieces, but props to him. That was pretty cool. So
he's your co-host to your weekly podcast.
yeah, so I had to give him some love today. Do you know what I mean? I can't pick my own guy. Do you know what I mean? Or I won't. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, pretty good.
That was a passive. Hey, let's lobby. Maybe someone else will pick him.
I thought you were going to pull up a TJ Murray reference. I didn't know you were going to.
It's been a while.
TJ!
Oh, I gotta love it. Anyone else want to talk about Dan's matches, or shall we move on?
The couple other MIVA matches that aren't top 20, though, we saw Quincy and Queens play. Queens is new to our conference. We haven't talked about Quincy much, but, you know, they split. So it was interesting to see kind of as our conference expanded and Queens is in it and what Jeremy's doing with those guys. So he got his first conference win. And to put some history, Jeremy started back when Grand Canyon started off, and Grand Canyon was in the MIVA. And he started that program. And so it's interesting as we move forward, and he's now with Queens, and Queens is in the conference now, and he got his first win. And Karen Kempner, for those of you who don't know, is down at Quincy, has been the past couple of years, and former Olympian herself, and has been getting that group better. So I think they both went 5 as well. So
Yeah.
Good stuff. We move on to a team we haven't really talked a whole bunch because they haven't really traveled. Well, actually, I don't mean massive homestand now. Hawaii with 2 wins versus Tusculum, but the eye-catching stat was a 18-0 serving run by Kurt Neusterer night 2. Actually, it was last night. Probably you guys deep into the morning for some of you because it was late. But I'm going to read from the Hawaii release. Rainbow Warriors served 16 aces in the victory, including 6 by middle blocker Kurt Neusterer, all during an epic 18-0 scoring run in the 3rd set. 16 aces were a season high and the 3rd most in a single match in program history. Thoughts on what Hawaii is doing? And fact of the matter is they shuffled the lineup, put some new faces in. They're still doing some damage. Who wants to jump in?
Yeah, I think
it'll be interesting to see what Tusculum looks like in 5 to 10 years. And obviously that stat won't happen then. Nothing against Hawaii. It's a good team, and they have got, some really, really good wins this year already. And they got a couple of big matches this weekend, but I mean, you're beating up on a team that's brand new. They're still figuring some things out. They got some nice players. Tusculum's fun to watch. They're scrappy. And in a year or 2 or 3, when those guys get a little more experience, they're going to be a handful. But it's just a headline. That's all it is to me.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Kurt's a good player, a really good server. I think he's someone that, as Hawaii continues to go through the season, he's going to be continuing to catch more and more eyeballs from people as he's filling into a new role there as a middle blocker. But he can serve sideline to sideline, not like traditionally, not as much heat, but plenty of control. And heck, even just serving 18 in a row against 0 people, I think most guys in our gyms would end up messing that up at some point. So that's impressive nonetheless.
Yep.
Thea, did you have someone jump in there with, or?
Yeah, I mean, I watched I think that entire serving run, and I mean, I think anytime you serve that many, there's something to be said. But there were a bunch that bounced off the tape, and he definitely had a few bounce his way that really helped. And but
the cable gods intervened, huh?
Yeah, they might have had a little luck on their side. But either way, this Hawaii team, I think we talked about it early in the year, the longer that they have and the more time that they get. And I think this goes into part of that scheduling that we were talking about. They need reps and they need time. But as they get it, the talent is there. And they're getting better and better each and every week. And I think by the time we see them in the Big West, I think this is going to be a hell of a team.
Dan, Dan.
Those guys get it. I mean, Hawaii's got a couple tough matches coming up this week, so those will be exciting to watch it. So I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yep. Oh, I love the play there. With that, I got to go to the match that I got to see firsthand, UCLA, UCI, and then the home series again. And I'll just say that Brent was full. It's the first match for Irvine in the Brent Event Center because of some incidents that occurred early on in the year. Packed house, and I think UC Irvine came out a little hesitant because they were down big. 0-2 in the second set. Didn't look like they were going to pull that one out. But in the third, they came out strong and pushed it to a 5th set. So entertaining to watch the comeback and how a team could turn it on. And they went and lost in the 5th. Midway through the 5th, UCLA turned it on with Cooper Robinson, who was playing some really good ball. And seeing the amount, I was talking to assistant Nick Vogel before the match. He's like, I got a tough problem, Rob. I don't know which big outside hitter to put in. So, but he's definitely a counted out. Yeah. But Irvine goes back around, travels up to UCLA. UCLA takes a 3-1. Nolan Flexen had a big night, but again, Cooper Robinson shows up and starts throwing down a whole bunch of balls down that big. And I'm telling you that he is so good. And Champlin, just such a steady force for UCLA. I love watching him play along with Rowan. So thoughts on that matchup, you guys, and whoever wants to jump in, please do.
Ethan Champlin's one of my favorite players out of everybody. Like, the kid's just that good. Like, and he's so controlled and he makes the team better. And whatever they end up putting him, he's got to be on the floor. You know what I mean? Because I think he helps them play the best level they can play. So
he played some lib on night 2.
Yeah, I know. The kid just has to be on the floor. He's that good. So he's just steady and calm, and super high IQ, and so pretty impressive.
And a good mustache that you can appreciate.
Does have a good mustache. So.
Anyone else on screen want to jump in?
Yeah, I think the Cooper Robinson comment, Cooper Robinson was phenomenal in both of these matches. And I think it's a testament to the depth that UCLA has. I don't think anybody on this screen has a kid like Cooper Robinson that they can have on the bench and not afford to play, not afford to use. But it's also a testament to Cooper and the fact that he's grinding it out with a really talented team. And once he had his chance, he gets out there and played really, really well against a great Irvine team. And then I think the comment about Ethan is spot on. I agree with Dan. He's always been my favorite player on that team, and to see him in the libero position with the exact same mentality. I mean, you watch him when he was an outside hitter. He's directing traffic. He's in control of the backcourt. He's in control of the front court. And then you put him at libero, and there's no difference. He's that same guy. He's incredibly poised. He's incredibly talented. And so I think it really doesn't say much about this Irvine team, because I think they're really talented and great, right? The fact that they lost both of these, but they easily could have won on that first night. And I think both these teams are probably going to run into each other again down the road.
Yep.
I think the
two
only
takeaways from my side. One,
ahead,
looking back at last year, Troy Gooch did not get enough credit for what he was doing on the court. And I think, that shows. And granted, most of the liberos are all young and haven't got a ton of experience there. But
Brad, you did on this podcast. We were.
I know, but still, even more.
That's right.
I mean, I think for most of us, myself, I didn't think that position would have that big of an impact on their team. And we've seen it, not necessarily lead to losses. They have 2 losses, which still at this point of the year, I think is a surprise for most people. But just seeing how it's created just kind of them trying to figure out how to fill that role, fill that void. And they're clearly trying everything and anything because they have the depth and the talent to be able to do that. So I think Troy Gooch, another shout out from back last year. And the second thing is Irvine shows the ability to play really high level volleyball. I think right now as Nolan Flexen tries to figure some things out on the left, and we see a little bit of him getting subbed out at times and getting some Keel Tengutar in there to get some passing in there and some more serve receive. But when Irvine gets it all together, and they will at some point, they're going to be firing and they're going to be a little bit scary. And Rob's going to be real fired up. And my last point is Rob. I saw it looked like some basketball thing, some Midnight Madness style, and you were in all white pants. And I really hope we see that for the San Diego Irvine match. I want to see the white pants come out.
First of all, you're not supposed to wear white pants until after Labor Day. Let's let's call it what it is. Second of all, if Flexen ever learns how to pass a ball, he's going to be one of the most athletic outside hitters in the country and has a very bright future playing professionally, making a lot of money. The kid hits at about 16 feet and has a cannon for an arm, but he hasn't figured out passing yet at this level. And I don't think that's a scouting report flaw by any standard. I think we all know what we're looking at, but that would be the only knock that you could have against that team or against that player is once he figures out how to pass consistently, game over.
Yep. Dan, anything to add on there?
I talked first.
Oh, well, I figured you'd close it out.
Well, I just think that Nolan and Jalen should play doubles beach together.
Woo! That'd be fun.
Guys, they'd be up there. They may not be able to ball control yet, but man, you just set up a ball to it.
I'll let Jason
double
Reed
blocker,
back in the
Dan.
day.
Double blocker. You don't need defense. Ball's not coming over the net.
Hey, I'm doing the USA College Beach thing. I'm getting both those guys to come and kind of.
Dan's already recruiting.
Yeah, so
Get a wheel a ball machine out onto the sand and just get him to pass ball after ball for 28 days straight.
much easier to pass in the beach. Just got to pass up, man, and setting is the tough part. So.
Yeah.
Well, Grand Canyon went 2-0 last week. Actually, I jumped too far ahead there. Wanted to recognize Ohio State. They had one match last week, but Jacob Pasteur enters the top 10 in Ohio State history with 1,228 career kills. So shout out to Jacob Pasteur. And another milestone last week. Long Beach State's Alan Knipe, 400 career wins. Love the little graphic they put up. I felt like they should have had Staying Alive from Saturday Night Fever playing on, because he's like doing this strut thing. So congrats to Al and his accomplishment, which I wanted to segue into first, your top players of the week, and we're going to talk about what's coming up, because Grand Canyon and Long Beach are the only two remaining undefeated teams. They've got some big ones, and I know we're going to talk about it. So players of the week, who started first last time? I think it was Dan. He jumped in fast. So let's go with Brad. He's like hanging back there.
Dang it, I don't remember who Dan said he was going to pick. I would have taken him.
I didn't say anybody this week, just so you know.
I got the guy we were just talking about, Cooper Robinson. 26 points both nights, 22 kills and 23 kills. Some blocks, some aces, well-rounded performance, and against some top high-level competition. So Cooper Robinson from UCLA.
All right, let's go to Jay.
I'm going to go Nero Omeni with Princeton. 15 kills and 500 on the first night versus Pep. 20 kills, 486 against UCSB on the next night. And I know Theo's just hating me right now. So I'm going to give one of his kids some love. His setter, Donovan Constable, 52 assists, 2 aces, 6 digs against Stanford. It's a big win for the kid, and give him a little confidence going in. But those are my 2 players of the week.
Jump over to Dan.
I'm going to do the 3-headed Ghidra monster for you guys that watch Godzilla. It's Mark Frazier, John Diedrich, and Bryce Walker. I think those 3 guys were huge in the win over Penn State. So
good call. And then close out with Theo.
Yeah, I'll take Tanashi with that big win over Loyola, and hit 19 kills, hitting 395. And then I'll take John Kerr, who 440, 13 kills, 3 digs, 13 points. Had a really nice weekend.
Yep. We're going to do our picks, matches to watch a little differently, because want to focus on the 2 undefeated teams for sure, because they got 2 big ones coming up, starting out with Grand Canyon, who are 9-0. They won both their matches at the Harvard Invitational, but they've got a pretty tough opponent here at Provo, BYU. Thoughts on that matchup, gentlemen? Let's start with we'll go with Theo on this one.
Come back to me.
Come back. All right, then let's go to Jay.
Grand Canyon, BYU, sign me up. Where do I watch?
Okay, I'm going to say I really feel like you've been seeing a lot of stuff on Benson and gosh, I'm forgetting the other, but I think Romanes is going to have a breakout weekend for BYU. Last year, Romanes was really good all season, but these other 2 outsides they brought in or pin hitters have been grabbing the stat lines and the attention. But I feel like he's so due. It's not that he hasn't been playing well, but I think he's going to be the big part of if they're able to beat Grand Canyon.
It'll be interesting to see if Mosier's got to be out there. I think he's a big piece for them. So
yeah, that was it, Moser.
Yeah, but I think BYU wins the first night. I think you're going to go in there and just from a serving standpoint, I think BYU wins the first night, and then Grand Canyon bounces back the second night.
This is at BYU?
Is it at BYU? Yeah.
That's what I had at BYU.
Yeah.
Well, Mosier is the guy that everybody will be looking at, but Bono Brown's the kid you got to be paying attention to. He's got a whip of an arm.
Right.
And he's kind of the unsung hero, so to speak. And Romanes hasn't even been playing that much this year, so I'm sure he's a good player. We all know he's a good player, but he hasn't seen much time yet.
I think this has been turned into one of the better rivalries here for a lot of various reasons. But I think 2 programs that notoriously have pretty good cheering sections, good crowds, they create a good environment, a good vibe in the gym. And I'm excited to see it kind of continue to go back and forth. And I can see Grand Canyon sneaking out of there, winning both. I can see them splitting. But if I had to lock in a prediction, I'm going to say Grand Canyon's going to sneak out of there with 2 victories and putting up quite the case to be the number 1 team in the nation after this week.
Just so you know, we're ahead of ourselves because BYU is playing Long Island this weekend.
Right.
And then it's BYU the next weekend. So, Rob, we're going to have to correct some of your
we're a week ahead?
All right.
On conversations here, buddy.
All right. Well, we know that's the next big one coming up. Well, not that we're looking past it, but
listeners are like,
so,
what are these guys talking about? They're like a week
I,
off.
my spreadsheet sorted it out wrong. So,
Okay,
well,
that's why I said to come back, because I was so confused. I was like, wait, I didn't see that matchup.
I
had it in my notes and wasn't looking at my spreadsheet. So that was because I think there's chatter out there saying that, well, they're talking about schedules and all that, but I'm like, still, people are gonna be watching that weekend just because it is BYU and it's at Provo, and that's usually a really good test for a team, anyways. So, with that,
have we talked about their win percentage there?
Yeah, we get a little bit.
92% is it Jay that brought it up last week?
Yeah.
No, you brought it up.
Yeah, we talked about it, I think, a little bit. I wasn't sure if we did it on or off cam, but I mean, that's an incredibly difficult team to beat there. And so, but I'm with Brad. I think GCU gets them twice.
Woo. Wow.
I'm in that boat too when it happens. I'm in that boat too when it happens.
Nick Slight is playing some really great volleyball. And that's a guy that when the moment is big, he's really good. And I think he'll be that good up in Provo.
Yeah. Well, I'll get one that is actually happening this week. Long Beach State, they come off a week with 2 wins against King, but it's the home and home series versus UCLA. Thoughts? Ooh, frozen on the
It's the first
screen.
big test for Long Beach here. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. UCLA's played pretty tough schedule and had a lot of battles. So seeing Long Beach at home, seeing Long Beach at UCLA is going to be really, really intriguing to see how their passing holds up. I think that's the ultimate question mark with Godbold passing a little bit more, Varga passing from the right side. How are they able to manage that and get Saponis and Briggs passing as many balls as possible against some tough jump servers? And the other end of it is UCLA from the end line and UCLA serving wise. Are they going to be able to exploit that and show what potentially could be a weakness or taken advantage of from the long side of things?
I think it's also 2 vastly different setting styles. You look at Rowan, who is tall, a little bit more controlled, a little bit more rhythmic. He runs an offense pretty well, understands his players' wants and needs. And then you got Aiden Knipe, who's kind of a gunslinger, smaller setter, chucks up a lot of high balls, but they always seem to be in really good spots for their hitters to attack. Maybe not quite the quick offense that they've had in years prior. So I think it's going to be interesting to see the 2 vastly different styles of volleyball being played.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that Long Beach has had multiple matches where they've had to figure some things out. Where UCLA has. They've ran into some issues. They've had to make adjustments. They've had to change the roster. They had to change the lineups. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how that affects this match, right? Like UCLA has been down and has been tested quite a bit, where I don't know that Long Beach has had those same situations thrown at them. And this is gonna be a lot of fun. I think it'll be really interesting to see how this turns out.
I always feel like there's an intense rivalry between John Sproul and Alan Knipe. It's always intriguing to me. So I honestly you watch the match. It's going to be a great match, a lot of great players, but I like watching the body language of those 2 guys when they play each other. It's pretty good drama, I think. Do you know what I mean? And so how intense they get or not, or where they're at with the refs and the dynamic with their guys in terms of that stuff. So just when you're watching the match, pay attention to the bench a little bit and see how those guys go. So
they are super animated. That's for sure. I think it's interesting that no one really mentioned the Long Beach middle situation, because they got a beast in Simon Torwi at 6'9", and the reigning ABCA player of the week, the freshman from Bulgaria, Lazar Buchkov, which is funny. One of the posts was from Alex Nikolov on the ABCA post. I told you so was his only comment on the Lazar Buchkov being named player of the week. But they're doing some good things too. And Torwi's got a wicked spin.
Yeah, Torwi's a known entity. The freshman kid, that kid's up in the air. And not only is he up in the air, but he's also up in the air quick. He doesn't run a slow offense. If you're not paying attention, your middles have to make some pretty fast decisions when that guy's in the front row. So, yeah, like it's going to be a battle to watch. It'll be a lot of fun. But I'm with Dan. You know, we all know each other, right? Everybody around the country, for the most part, we know every head coach in the country. And it's interesting sometimes when you watch some of your friends coaching against each other, you know about the little backstories and the little comments that are made. And, you know, we all hang out at some various point. It'll be interesting to see how that one goes.
Well, I'll be courtside. I'll be sure to get some sideline video, the behind the scenes.
Well, and for the viewers to know, right? Everybody obviously knows John Sparrow's the national team coach. Alan Knipe is a post national team coach. So I think that rivalry that Dan is talking about, there's definitely some pride there. There's definitely some pride. It's going to be a fun one.
Well, I know we are going a little long, but we got to get to our Whatcha Watchin in week 6. So you guys have yours lined up? You ready to go?
Sure.
Let's go. Brad first.
I think it's pretty easy. Stanford at Hawaii. I know Dan wanted to say it, so I had to make sure I got it in there before him.
All right. Theo.
Yeah, UCSB Pepperdine. I think
PCH series.
Yeah, and really because of both those teams coming off of some losses last week, and seeing how they respond and bounce back, I think they're both at a point in their season where these are some pretty important wins.
All right, over to Dan.
I'm going to talk about our own conference. Ohio State comes to, us and Loyola. You've got a couple other conference games going on where I think Ball State plays Lindenwood, and so and then PFW and Loyola as well. And so there's going to be some battles in the MIVA this week that are going to be pretty good to watch. So
yeah, good call. Jay, still on vacation?
I'm still on vacation, going back out this weekend, hopefully to swing the sticks again. I got 4 that I'll be watching. We already talked about UCLA Long Beach St. Loyola PFW is one I want to see. I want to see if PFW can continue the work that they put in against a Loyola team that maybe is trying to find its identity. Obviously, Stanford, Hawaii. That's going to be a great match to watch. Unfortunately, it's at Hawaii, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so none of us will be able to watch it. The other one that I'm going to be watching is St. Francis versus Charleston. Charleston is a team that has not scheduled extremely tough in the beginning parts of their season the last few years. Similar this year. However, they've got some good players. St. Francis runs one of the fastest, quick left side offenses I've seen in a while. I think their outside hitters almost on his 4th step and almost in the air by the time that thing gets to them. When they're in system, they're pretty dangerous. It'll be interesting to see what Charleston does to beat them off the net a little bit and slow them down. But St. Francis has got some players. Their opposites doing a real nice job. Zini, I believe, is his name.
Yep,
and,
Nathan Zini.
Yep, it'll be interesting to see who comes out of that one. So that's my under the radar pick for the week.
All right. Who's left? Is that Theo?
Brad. Oh,
Brad,
no,
okay.
I started us off.
You started. I forgot. I lost
good.
myself there.
But another one to watch, Merrimack at Harvard. That would be another interesting one. Merrimack's played some tough teams, and Harvard has too. So I can see that one being a 5-setter.
you got Lincoln Memorial and Princeton too. So
Yeah, that'll be good.
another good one.
Yeah, I have a MIVA question for you. So PFW is going to play Loyola on the 6th, and then they're going to go and play Queens twice, all in the same week. Is that normal for conference?
Yeah, Theo, I'm not sure the show has enough time for me to be disgruntled about what our schedule looks like right now, but it's unbalanced and just not so Lindenwood played us on a Wednesday and then had to go to Ohio State on a Sunday.
Oh,
So it's just we had 9 teams. They were trying to figure it out, and I just don't think it worked out as well as everybody had hoped. You know what I mean? And so you're going to see some weird things and just some unbalanced schedule stuff that's going on. We just play Ohio State. Ohio State has to play us and Loyola this weekend. And so tough on Ohio State, you know what I mean, in terms of that, you know what I mean? And so so you'll see a little bit more of those weird situations going on with MIVA play as we go through this year. And so hopefully we can work through it for the next year after that. So
all excellent choices. And with that, that concludes our week 6 episode of College Volleyball Weekly's Tumultuous Top 20. Gentlemen, good luck this week. That's Jay Hosick of George Mason, Brad Rosser of UC San Diego, Dan Fran of Lewis, and Theo Edwards of CSUN. we'll see you online this week watching some matches, and I'll be reporting courtside. Have a great week, guys.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to College Volleyball Weekly. Be sure to follow Rob Aspero at the Rob on the Mic on Instagram and at Rob on the Mic on Twitter.